This is a very different kind of panel to the rest of the schools show, in that this is a sort of B2B panel for schools and agents about that market, which is an increasingly important market for schools. I did some data analysis on this earlier this year for a talk I gave at ISBA, which is the Bursars Association, and back in 1985, there were about 5,000 international students coming into the UK each year, new ones, and it's now about 12,500, something like that. So it's increased by, my maths is not quite good enough, but 120%, something like that, 130%. A really big growth, and a big part of that growth has come from agents. That's what's driven the expansion of the market for UK independent schools. And so what we're going to do today is talk a bit about the globe and how UK schools are doing in the global marketplace for private education, because obviously we're not the only country in the world that delivers it. And I've got this brilliant panel with me today who are going to be talking about how the market is doing in their territories. What I'm going to do, we're going to each panelist is going to talk separately rather than be a panel commenting on it, because I think we'll get more out of it if we discuss it in detail with each of them individually. Rather than do an introduction and you forget who everybody is, what we'll do is we'll introduce you each one at a time as we introduce your segment, if that's okay. So apologies if you're wondering who everybody is and you haven't got your program to hand. If you look at the program, you can probably vaguely guess who's who, but I'm going to leave that as a kind of slight mystery. So if you're wondering who's Nathaniel and who's Pavel, for example, you could just going to have to wait and see. Because first of all, the easiest one to identify is Susan. So I'm going to ask Susan to speak first, and so the format is going to be that we'll talk for about 6-7 minutes, maybe 10. And then at the end, when we've done all four, if there are questions, we'll have questions. And after that, we'll do a little bit of networking, and we can use the space we've got, because we've got an audience here that is a mixture of agents and schools and so on. So we can all meet each other afterwards. So, Susan, do you want to start a little bit by telling us about your clients, where they live, what kind of numbers come to the UK, and that sort of thing?
Okay, well, if I may, could I introduce myself?
Of course.
Just a 30 seconds intro. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan Fang. I'm the founder and CEO of OxBridge Holdings. So I've been in this industry for 25 years. We set up the company in Taiwan in 2002. So since then, we have helped about 20,000 students from predominantly the Far East to go to English-speaking destinations for both schools and universities. Now, I've personally visited about 200 independent schools worldwide. And this year, I'm doing something really crazy. I'm taking on a project, visiting 50 schools in 50 weeks, the best of British schools. That is, if I survive it, I'm going to write a book about it. So, watch your space. Now, I'm also the mom of two daughters. One of them is an international student in the USA. And last year, I ran the Marathon des Sables. So what these experiences have taught me is that if you actually take these experiences and have the right mentality, whether it is the desert or it's teenagers or the international education sector, we always have the chance to overcome all sorts of resilience and challenges. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. So now we're going to dig into some sort of some detailed questions about your clients. Where generally do they come from? Which parts of the world?
So, as I said, East Asia. I'm Taiwanese, so my offices are based in Taiwan, and we also operate in China. We're in Beijing, we're in Shanghai. Taiwan, we have 4 offices from the north to the south.
Yep.
And we also have London. So predominantly Greater China as a whole, but I would say Taiwanese and mainland Chinese, our bread and butter.
Brilliant.
Having said that, a lot of the Chinese these days do not come from China or Taiwan. So interestingly, they come from Cyprus, they come from Portugal, they even come from the west coast of California.
That is, again, I mean, that's a fascinating thing, isn't it? The expat these days could mean people are all over the place. And in terms of, say, numbers and volume, so how many a year come to UK schools? Not universities, just the UK independent schools.
Well, Taiwan, if you look at the ISC report, I think every year the new students, about just 100, short of 100. And the Chinese used to be above 12,000, but I think recently just gone down a bit under, short of 10,000.
That's the total population. I think the numbers coming in each year is about 3, something like that. 3, but it has dropped a bit.
Has dropped.
So that's interesting. Can we talk about that? About the relative size? Like why is Taiwan 100 and China is 3,000, for example? What is it?
So Taiwan, geographically is much more smaller. It is a province, whereas China is huge. And also Taiwan predominantly has had this tradition of sending their children to America. And even till now, when we have Donald Trump in position, second time around, Taiwanese still believe USA is their number one destination. And they've had this history of sending their children, young and old, since the 70s. It's very difficult to break that. Taiwanese are fiercely loyal. So if they have families been going to one destination forever, they're going to continue to do that.
That actually, all the research on international student recruitment is precisely about that people follow pathways, and once those pathways are set up, it's very hard to shift them. Is Trump having much of an effect, do you think?
Not so much on Taiwan, because if we look at the book around students in the pipeline, the ones that really uber super wealthy, they still regard USA as the number one. They have their ways, they have their means to circumnavigate also the political uncertainties.
Okay.
China's a different story, though.
Yeah,
I would say China, it's about half-half. First of all, I assume everybody knows China's going through a bit of an economic slowdown right now. So what we have seen in the last decade, where lots of 14 and 16-year-olds coming from China to do their GCSE and A-levels, that's predominantly from the middle class. And that section is really thinning out. Nevertheless, the good news is the really wealthy, the top-tier echelon, they're still there. These parents are wealthy, they're willing to pay, but they just become a lot cautious. While UK is still highly regarded and holds a space in their mind, they just don't want to be spending their money carelessly. So in a sense that recently, because of lots of news of all the protests and possibly a little bit negative on the UK side, that has actually fed back to the Chinese sort of community. So I think the wealthy families are just being a lot more cautious of where they're going to send their children, and the decision timeline is going to take longer. They might not be, say, 5 years ago, yes, US, UK, this is where I'm going to send my kid at the age of 13 plus, and let's do that. They might start with immersion, winter programs, summer programs. And so you'll find the decision-making process going to take longer before they finally decide, okay, I'm going to enroll my kid in a sixth form.
So, the bounce back from COVID has been slower from China, hasn't it, than any other international market? So is this just a new caution that's emerging? Yeah.
For sure. I think there is the financial side of things because the economy is slowing down. So the whole chunk of the middle class is just really being squashed. While the wealthy, the top echelon, they can still spend. But because what happened in COVID, especially what they've seen happening in the West, a lot of the children of their friends has been split away from their families. They don't want to repeat that. So there's still that fear that the second COVID, second pandemic is going to come along. That's the reason.
That is so interesting. Obviously, we were doing a lot of stuff in COVID with schools, and a lot of Chinese students were stuck here, weren't they, for a long period of time, not able to go home. I hadn't really thought of that as being one of the reasons for that drag in recovery. That's fascinating. When parents come to the UK, are they primarily looking for boarding places or day places? And are they also looking to move their family to the UK, or is it just sending their kids for school?
No, school is always going to be a big draw, but there are increasingly more families coming as a family, but usually we call it a split route. So one parent will come and stay with the child, and they'll put their child in a day school. London is a big draw, of course. The other parent will stay in Asia and continue to make money. Yeah, so that's increasingly the case.
And last question then, are you seeing, the UK is obviously competing with other markets. We've talked about the US, but are there other places that people are considering?
Yeah, I mean, the top tier of the groups, they want USA, they want Switzerland and UK, and I think that's still within the same bracket. However, let's not ignore the middle class. There is still money there, yet they're looking at British curricula provided by schools in the Far East. So we're looking generally at Japan, looking at Malaysia, and even increasingly so Thailand.
And what about Singapore, which has got those very, very high-performing schools?
Definitely, Singapore and Malaysia is very similar in terms of region, but most of the British schools, the big names are in Malaysia. They have the land, they have its facilities. So, if families are looking at Singapore, they're most likely also looking at Malaysia.
Okay, that's really helpful. Okay, great. So we're going to move on then to Nathaniel, if that's all right.
That's great, yeah.
So do you want to start by explaining about Dean Associates and what it is you do?
Yes, great. So we probably work in a slightly different way to Susan, that our work is predominantly corporate relocation. So it's people coming in, usually on maybe 2, 3, 4 year assignments, looking for a school place for families that are bringing over, so children of all ages, children of different language abilities, different abilities coming in. So it's corporate relocation rather than private families coming into the UK.
Great. And do you want to talk a bit about then where your families come from too?
Yeah, so the families come from anywhere around the world. So it could be the Far East, America, Europe. We get a lot of families from India as well. So generally people where a company is bringing someone in. So there's no particular we don't have any particular area which is above or below anywhere else. It really depends on what companies are doing and when companies are moving into the UK.
And what kind of volume are we talking about?
Well, we probably as a company help maybe 300, 400 families each year. Not all of them are looking at private schooling, so a lot of companies have restricted what they're doing supporting private schooling, so a lot of companies are now moving over to state schools. But there's still for the higher echelons of the employees, so probably about, our work used to be almost 100% private schooling, now it's probably more 50-50. Split down the middle.
And in terms of typical ages of the children, or all ages. And do they tend to be English speaking, or?
I had a look at that. Probably about the majority are English speaking, but the parents are always English speaking. But the children, maybe about 40%, have some additional language support.
Right. So you're looking for schools that can support that, or?
Always looking for schools that are willing to support that, which is obviously a bit trickier when the kids are older.
So the next question is quite complex, because you really are talking about completely global patterns.
Yeah.
But let's rather than say your region, in this thing of people who are doing that particular kind of relocation move, you've talked a bit about the shift from towards state schools as well as independent. Do they want boarding as well? Are you seeing that, or less so?
Well, nearly all families are wanting day schools. The families are always coming over with the children as well, so you're not getting people coming over and leaving children here on a boarding situation. There are situations where parents are being reassigned on, and they'll leave their kids in boarding school for a period of time if it's a critical point, GCSEs, A-levels, sixth form, that sort of period.
Mm-hmm. And are they... I think it's irrelevant to think about other world markets, because they're not comparing them. They're moving.
Not really. Everyone is coming into the UK.
Yeah. But in terms of then how they decide where to end up, is that kind of because they've got ties to places, or where their job is, or?
Yeah. So the big influence will be where the jobs are. So the places we normally are working with will be London and the South East, the big cities around Britain. How people choose schools. The location, as I said, is a major factor. The other factor is because companies are often bringing people to the same place again and again and again, they're obviously dipping into the network of existing families, existing people who have been at schools to help them sort of make decisions when they're coming over.
And in terms of things like the academic, obviously here we've got a whole lot of, during the day, we have a whole day of UK parents trying to work out what schools to send their children to, and dealing with the complication of whether the cost of it, whether their children will like the culture of the school, whether they're academically suitable for a particular type of school and stuff. For someone coming in as a relocating, that must be really complicated. Is that the kind of territory that you're helping with, or?
It's extremely complicated, and also they're planning often that they're going to be moving on after 2 or 3 years to another destination after that. So they're trying to think a little bit about the choices they make now and how they play out in possibly 3 years' time. Obviously, international schools are a major factor which they consider, but a lot of families don't want international schools because they want their kids to be in a little bit more of a settled environment rather than going into an international environment where kids are churning over and churning through every year.
How knowledgeable do you think your clients are about UK school?
That's a good question. I would say there's a lot of information available. So they are often, everyone does enormous amounts of internet search, Google searching on schools information. What they struggle with a little bit is what it means and the context and understanding what they've read and how that actually plays out in the practicalities of what they're doing and the choices they're making.
Okay, and here's a question that I think is very relevant for schools. What factors pull them towards particular schools and what puts them off?
Yeah, I think some of the factors, obviously, as I said, that location is a factor in how they're making their choices. People like schools to respond quickly. They're often making decisions on quite a quick turnover, so they have to have information presented to them quickly. They also want an assessment process with the private schools, which is as fast and straightforward as possible, and they often want that being handled remotely and done as quickly as they possibly can. So when schools are actually able to respond and come back with information in a timely manner, that's a big draw from people making decisions.
Yeah, we find this with both McFarlane as well, actually. Our clients always want speed. Yeah. And that's not always the way the sector works.
Not always the way, but I think some schools are better than others in actually coming back and getting information as I say, in a timely manner.
Great. So I'm going to move on now to Pavel. Would you like to start by introducing Bruton Lloyd and what it is you do?
Yes, I believe I'm quite a stark contrast to the previous two speakers. So I represent a rather small company. We're Bruton Lloyd Education Consultants. We've got roughly 20 years of experience under our belt. And we've mostly catered to Eastern European segment of the market. And that is to say that most of our families are international, maybe based all over the place across the globe, but predominantly in member states of the European Union, Central Europe, may have Eastern European heritage, some presence in the States, the Middle East, Dubai, one of the bigger markets, Cyprus as well, a few in Asia, but very limited exposure there. And I would say that roughly 70% of all of our families are based overseas, with 30 being based in London or just around London. Yeah, I guess.
Okay, that's a great start. So centred on Eastern Europe, EU, but then others from a broader.
Yes, and I suppose the model of our business is that the majority of our new families hear from us from existing clients. So they may have links to Eastern Europe, but they may be based, for example, in the States, or they may be business partners of an Eastern European family based in the States, but themselves, they may be born and brought up in the States. So we get Americans interested in.
Can we say the Russian word?
Yes, well, I assume, given the fact that it's not only Russia, it's also Ukraine, and
so was it Russia? And was it a lot of Russians? And is it?
It used to be a lot of Russians. It's quite a few Ukrainians these days. After the start of of Russia's invasion in Ukraine, quite a lot of Ukrainians were displaced. A lot of them found themselves in Germany, in Switzerland, in France. And the majority of those families actually saw that move as a sort of a temporary arrangement, with the final destination being the UK. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting thing, isn't there, that if you're a keen reader of Independent School Council's statistical surveys, like I am, Ukraine appeared as a category about 3 years ago, which means it's become a sort of significant region, which it wasn't considered before. It was non-EEA before.
So much so that I believe Pearson Education is going to introduce Ukrainian GCC.
And presumably a lot of your clients are in that non-EEA or EEA or non-EEA sort of other
non-EEA. Yes, I would say indeed. Yes, quite a few of those, and they've seen quite a change in the immigration policy, obviously. But we can touch on that later on.
So let's talk about demand for UK schools. What kind of places are they looking for? Are they coming to board or?
Yes, well, the majority of overseas families actually are looking for a boarding place for their children. Like I say, 30% of all of our clients will be based in or around London. So for younger children, those families tend to favour day schools in central London. But then, more often than not, they will then come back to us seeking guidance with 13 plus or 16 plus point of entry into boarding schools for those students. Mm-hmm. So the majority of those will be boarding places.
And they also, how many are looking to move family into the UK at the same time?
Good question. With the number of Ukrainians we've had recently, quite a few, but historically I would say that the majority of our families would be staying where they're based temporarily or permanently, with their children being sent to board in the UK.
And are you seeing shifts in demand for UK?
Yes, I would say that every now and then we will get a new inquiry, and families from overseas will be saying we want to ideally send our child to a UK boarding school, but if you could also suggest a couple of options in Dubai, for example.
Mm-hmm. And how price sensitive is your market?
Well, the big elephant in the room is VAT. Well, if you look at boarding prices, they have increased quite significantly since January 2025. To be honest with you, for the majority of the families who already have children in UK schools, they don't think of moving. The new families, I assume, part of the reason why they are inquiring about other markets and British schools based overseas is because of the rise in costs. And
how knowledgeable are they? I mean, they want UK schools. Do they come kind of really geared up, really knowing what they want, or what's suitable, or are you having to start from scratch?
Great question. So I would say that the general awareness, like 30% of our clients, not necessarily from London, will have very good understanding of how the system works. But I can see that since the pandemic, the knowledge in what UK qualifications are, A-levels and GCSEs, has risen. I think partly because there are now so many online schools that offer A-level and GCSEs. Again, given the fact that quite a few talented specialists in the education field had to relocate from Ukraine or Russia, the places they end up working now may not have internationally recognized qualifications. The schools that they open, say, in Croatia or in Montenegro or elsewhere in the world, in Cyprus, they will be looking at the national curriculum as well as an opportunity to give their students an option of doing A-level on the side or altogether just A-level in the final 2 years. So when now we get new inquiries from families, they will almost never confuse GCSE and A-levels and IB. Okay. And so on and so forth.
And a question that isn't on the sheet, but I think it's really relevant. Do they have a destination? Are they aiming at UK universities or US universities or?
The majority of them will be looking at UK universities as the ultimate goal, with a steady increase in interest in the US. So quite a few will be gearing towards continuing their education in the States, but the UK is still at the top of their list.
Yeah, this is one of my hobby horses, actually. I think UK schools don't underestimate how important UKHE is for the demand for them. That it's not just about how good the schools are here; it's also about how good the universities are. Right. And you know, while we continue to have universities in the top 10, lots of them in the top 10, that's a key factor. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Sam. Do you want to do the same thing and kick us off and tell us about Britannia?
Sure. Well, my name is Samuel.
Sorry, Simon. I call you Sam.
No, it's okay. My company's called Britannia. Slightly different. I started the company not thinking of founding an agency. I had a good time studying in the UK at a very young age of 9. I came back to Hong Kong about 12 years ago, and I was a journalist. I was a columnist. I blogged about my own experience. So here in England, you have an independent school show, you've got Tyler School Guide, Good School Guide, you have a lot of information about schools. In Hong Kong, not so much. So I started to blog, and readership picked up, and today we place about 2,000-3,000 students from many offices across Asia. We're still very Hong Kong focused. I think that's about 50% of our market. We have a big office in Shanghai that started a year ago. It's picking up. We have an office in Kuala Lumpur. It's our oldest office beyond Hong Kong. But that market is shrinking massively. And we're doing our first show in Bangkok this coming Sunday. So not sure yet how that will perform. We've got 90 registrations, families. And we're looking to open in Tokyo early next year.
Cool. So why are some markets rising and some shrinking? That's a good starting point, I think.
I think we do quite well in Hong Kong because the market is shrinking. I mean, the general consensus is, but we are very niche in the sense that we always provide information. So I'm constantly on TV, radio. So that I think in Hong Kong, our market is increasing because of I think demand for Hong Kong families have changed. In the past, we used to have big shows. You would look at a union flag, and then we go. And then we look at league tables. Very transactional. Now these days, parents are more knowledgeable. Because with the internet, right? With parents, everyone loves the kids. And you want to know more about schools. You want to know, the boarding experience, the sports, the music, the arts, the all-round holistic education. So I think that's the Hong Kong culture changing. It's more sophisticated market. China is booming, but the information, the knowledge of the clients are behind, I feel. It's still very much like 10 years ago in Hong Kong. And also we've got the great firewall of China. So when they Google a school, there's no Google. So it needs different media platforms to find out information about schools. So I think that's not just the market changing, but the culture changing. Japan is booming. When I say booming, it's picking up.
Small market that's growing fast.
From a very from a small number. Malaysia, it's sadly, I think it's halved since we joined.
Yeah, and why is that?
I think the economy plays a big role. The economy is not very good. The currency is not too good. We always find it tricky as well because Malaysia, you have Indians, Indian Malaysians, Malaysians, Chinese Malaysians. So we've not quite clicked in Malaysia. That's the truth. But my partner there is very capable. It's digital marketing because he has to survive in such a tricky market. Yeah. He managed the SEOs, the SEMs, the content. He does really well.
I mean, there's a similar thing within the UK, like boarding boarding schools in small areas, quiet areas, got really good at marketing long before big London day schools who really quite rubbish at it. We just had a regular stream of people who were queuing up. There's something very interesting about being in a quiet market. You have to get good at it. I mean, what about the kind of demand for for schools? Are they what age are they coming over? I mean, one of the things I've noticed is that the China market, they board a bit younger than from other parts of the world, where they might come in, like Spain might come in for a year or two at the end. Like Chinese students seem more likely to come for a longer stretch, or Hong Kong. Is that still the case?
Yeah, Hong Kong especially, because my background as well, I went to a prep school so I'm very fond of a prep experience. So in Hong Kong, we're quite big on the prep market. Mainland, I think if you talk about the entire market, I'm sure it's higher education focus. I mean, the numbers for unis, foundation programs, is massive. It's just there's just so many people, so there's just enough for even prep school placement. We find it that with mainland Chinese clients, Those who has aspirations for Western education are very open-minded. So if you give them, if they just need to know, be confident at the product that they're looking at.
And are they, as Susan was saying, are they also considering other countries? I mean, are they thinking about the States and Singapore and so on?
No, 100%. Mainland China, especially I mean, 3-5 years ago, it's predominantly American targeted. Even today, with Trump, with the Harvard case, with all that, the very knowledgeable parents are still looking for Stanford, the Ivies plus. But I think that's not because of a country reason. It's because they are just amazing institutions. But the preparation process is so difficult. So they aspire for Harvard, but once they find out, okay, the process is so much more rigorous, so much more demanding, then they will also consider. Usually it's now in parallel. Right? You apply for the States and you apply for the UK. But these two would be the most highly sought after destinations.
And that's because of HE, really, not because of the reputation of the schools per se. Or...
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But Hong Kong, I think the demand for America's boarding schools definitely dropped massively, and especially with the BNO scheme. The BNO scheme, it's for Hong Kong people born before 1997. Since 2019, the UK governments have given an initiative for Hong Kong people with the BNO passport to reside in the UK, study in the UK, and work in the UK. That's kicked up. That's increased demand for UK education massively.
And how knowledgeable do you think your clients are about qualifications and schools? And I mean, you talked a bit about them doing research and so on. But do you feel, you, as someone who went through it, do you feel like they understand it, or are you having to explain it?
Well, I think increasingly so, especially Hong Kong. And that's because of my market, again, because I'm a columnist. Those who read my columns are likely to be school seekers with, they with a bit more demand. They want to find out more about school, more than just a logo and pictures. But I think the Hong Kong parents are asking, they're asking more questions that they should when they choose a school than say 10 years ago. Okay, so again, I'll ask you the same question I asked the others. What are the factors that pull them towards particular schools and what puts them off? Actually, I think that has changed. Some years back, it was purely league table. So it was like ranking. Number one is surely better than number two. Now I think they understand, okay, some schools are highly international despite being top of the league table, but they offer something that some other schools don't, right? I think what my clients usually look for, higher boarding ratio, depends on what age as well, right? If you're younger, like when I went to Gresham's, wonderful school, North Norfolk, not quite the central of England, right? It's far and it's cold, but it offers something very different, very unique. I think if you're younger, looking for the all-round holistic education, the character building experience, that sort of boarding school. And then if you go up, slightly older, 16 plus, some parents want London, right? Students want cities, or they want UCAT prep, personal statement. They want to be surrounded with highly motivated international students, for example. So I think that question is difficult to answer, right? But I think for sophisticated market like Hong Kong, definitely parents ask for more questions. So cold weather doesn't put you off. What does? I mean, are there things where you think that school's not going to work? Currently, I think, well, with that, we're worried. I was at Queen Margaret's. Honestly, hands on heart, one of my favorite schools. I love the school. 300 students north of Yorkshire, 10 minutes from centre of York. I love the school, but it's shut down. So what puts me off now is the fragile economic situation within the school sector. Yeah, the school has no problem. So you're looking for schools that seem stable and reliable. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think UK parents are thinking the same thing. We had a news talk at the beginning that was precisely about that, because there's a lot of stuff in the papers about
mergers and takeovers and so on.
But I must say, I don't think that's the right thing, because I think these schools offer something very good, and we shouldn't end up with just big schools. There are kids that fit a school with 300 kids. Like I said, Queen Margaret's, it's lovely, but it's sad.
One thing that I think schools worry about, and I wonder whether parents do as well, is and I'll throw this at everybody now, is about clusters of children in schools. That if there are too many from one area, that they won't integrate, and people will just talk to each other in their own home language. Do your parents worry about that?
They've always worried about it, but I think schools historically have been managing it really well. I think there's a general understanding that Russian speakers should not be teaming up with Russian speakers only due to the situation with Ukraine and Russia. Russians and Ukrainians should not be boarding together. And then again, I think the majority of my clients want to see in the school this combination of academic excellence, if possible, and this British experience. And I think schools recognize it as one of the main criteria for international families, and they manage it really well.
Anyone have anything to add?
Well, I actually think the trend is moving to the other direction. 10 years ago, I would say lots of East Asians want to choose a school with as few East Asians as possible. And when I say East Asian, I'm not talking about any nationality, just the look of it. Now families actually feel more safe and feel like, yes, my child will actually be more of a inclusive environment and they can belong. If they see another East Asian in the school, they say, fantastic. So I think this is changing. Yeah. So many of these internationals want to feel represented. And I think that's really key in our British school because we have so much to offer. The academic rigor, creativity, and most important, we are creating or building character. And I think that's something no other schools in the world will offer.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, that schools need to be proud of the diversity of their recruitment. That being a global school is a really great thing, and that should be represented. I think a lot of London schools really understand that.
And I think it is actually part of British experience, to be honest with you. So I, as an agent, I can actually see that quite a few schools outside London, if I may just add there, they do want to introduce this international feel, but not to isolate anyone, but rather to celebrate diversity. But yeah.
Great. So do we have any questions from the audience? Have we got a microphone? Sorry, there's one just coming. Just hold on a second and we'll...
Hi there. This is a question mainly to Susan and to Samuel. British education is increasingly being seen as an export, right? So, in Bangkok, for example, you've got King's, Harrow, Wellington, Brighton College. Same thing in China. I guess my question is, what is the appeal for families to come to the UK when they've got all of these wonderful brand names in Asia?
Agree. I think I'm also a governor of an international school in Hanoi. I think what it is first of all, parents understand too. It is a franchise model. It shares the same crest, the same uniform. Sometimes, member of staff fly out and become management in these schools, but it can never replicate what it has here. But it shouldn't, because what about the sports fixtures? What about the culture? What about the corridor cricket? I don't know. It's very different. But there are some amazing international schools there. It's very appealing to have a British brand in domestic in Hong Kong or in other parts of Asia, because with the brand you can attract the top teachers. It also I've seen schools, Epsom Malaysia, for example. It has something to offer that Epsom here don't. The golf and the tennis is top notch, but the shooting, for example, is non-existent compared to Epsom here. So I think just look at them separately, and not like McDonald's. So you cannot franchise education. So that's how I see it.
Great question, by the way.
My take is...
Got one at the back.
I was going to say the students make the difference. Even Epson Malaysia and Epson UK are going to be very different because of the students, the mixture. Who are they from? What sort of family background? Ultimately, students are here to learn, but they also want to make friends for future. So choose the school well, because if your future aspiration is to stay in Asia, maybe it is the right choice to stay in Epson Malaysia, because that's where your future network is going to be.
Great. Question at the back.
Yeah, I have a question for all five of you, or for all of us, actually. A lot of talk has been on country attractiveness in terms of what schools and universities offer. And that's where the push or the promotion stops. I've heard very little about the attractiveness of life after school or after university, especially in terms of employment, like what a country offers in terms of employment opportunities to keep the student there if the student doesn't want to work to return home.
Okay, I mean that's a very good question. So it's effectively, what the visa situation is for students once they finish university to be able to stay and work if they want to, and how important a factor that is. To translate that, I guess. What do you think?
Well, it's less relevant for me, I think, because people are going straight through. So probably let someone else on the panel to have a talk about that.
Well, how appealing it is to stay.
Do your parents worry about whether their children will be able to stay, or do they want them to come back?
I guess there's different parts, right, of my market. Hong Kong, because we've got a BNO scheme now, so they could get here if they're eligible, anyways. And during COVID, I actually helped a lot of students and families relocate here, attending state school, grammar school. These Hong Kong, many of them are not finding it easy to find jobs, the parents, even though they're professionals over in Hong Kong. So you're probably right. It's whoever the responsibility lies on. It's not an appealing if you want to attract students because of job prospect. But then again, it really, because the question is very broad. If you study like a professional degree, or if you come out with a very highly sought after employer, if you've got employability, the right skill set, I'm sure that these students, we've got many of the Chinese, for example, mainland Chinese, they do, after graduate, many of them try to stay and work and gain places here, and we don't find that a problem.
Do you agree? Your parents worry about long-term things like that?
Well, I think it's an option. It shouldn't be the means to an end. I think ultimately education, what does the outcome of education is? Is it just purely to get a job? I don't believe that's what education is about. Yes, ultimately you have a career path, but does it have to come directly related to the school and the university that you study at? I personally don't think that's the responsibility of a host country to provide to the international students and families. Say, yes, we'll guarantee you to have a job. It is down to that family and their child. And they are mobile in this world already. Not only can they stay in the UK, if they can make it, they can go anywhere in the world. So try to separate the two things. I don't think education should ultimately lead to a job. It's not a direct correlation.
I think, yeah, and I think also there is a very different thing about being a parent of a child as opposed to, say, choosing a university, where at 18 you are starting to think about careers and future and so on. Whilst I think when you're younger, it's a bit more complicated than that, isn't it? Really, I mean, you might be an amazingly driven parent, but you don't know what your child's going to want to do, or. I think probably we should wind up at this point and thank our panel enormously for this. What I suggest we do is, if you want to meet the panel, that if the panel can either can split, some of you here, some in this bit over there, and that we can all kind of socialise and spend a bit of time networking, that would be a very good way to use this last 15-20 minutes of the show. Thank you very much. Thank you.